Ethan walked out of the store. The fresh morning air and the sunlight creeping through the maple trees made him feel relaxed after a productive week. In his hand, he holds 2 paper bags full of fresh food, preparing for a leisurely dinner at home. His glossy black Range Rover is parked right under the shade of a tree, as a symbol of his efforts and success at work. But that peace was quickly broken by a loud voice coming from behind. "Hey, stay there!" Ethan was startled, turned around, and saw an elderly woman, small in appearance but walking towards him. She wore a cardigan embroidered with flowers, her face frowning as if she wanted to freeze everything in sight. Her sudden appearance and harsh expression made Ethan uncomfortable for a moment, but he tried to suppress it, thinking that it might just be a misunderstanding. "Do you think you can come in here and take something that doesn't belong to you?" Her voice was full of doubt and harshness. Ethan put 2 bags of food in the trunk of the car, trying to stay calm. "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" he asked, his voice gentle. But the woman didn't let him explain. "This car is mine. You can't take it." Ethan laughed, thinking that this must be a strange mistake. He took the key from his pocket and pressed the unlock button. The car lights flashed twice, as if the car itself was speaking up to protect its owner. "You see, this is my car," he said, trying to end the conversation. But the woman's narrow gaze was full of suspicion, and instead of yielding, she smirked. "Good trick, but I know you. People like you are always trying to cheat." Her prejudiced words made the smile on Ethan's lips disappear. He felt the injustice weigh heavily in his heart, but kept his voice calm. "Madam, I can present the vehicle registration documents if you want." However, the woman still did not change her attitude at all, just stood with her arms crossed, her eyes burning with skepticism. Ethan sighed, clearly feeling that the situation was getting out of control. He couldn't help but be frustrated by her aggression, but he also knew that losing his temper would only make things worse. He took a deep breath, determined to face this absurd situation with his inherent calmness. Ethan felt the discomfort rise by the second as Linda pulled out her phone and started calling 911. Her voice full of drama and exaggeration. "There's a big man trying to steal a car. He looks very dangerous." She deliberately emphasized every word, her eyes flashing over Ethan with defiance, as if she was in control of the entire situation. Ethan stood still, watching her behave like a lead actor in a tragic play, wondering how things had gone this far because of an unnecessary misunderstanding. He sighed, picked up his phone and opened the video recording app. "If you want to play this, let's record the whole thing," he said, his voice deep but determined. Linda paused for a moment. His calmness seemed to surprise her, but soon she continued, trying to play the victim. "Do you think recording a video will threaten me? I'm not afraid. The truth is on my side." Ethan gritted his teeth, feeling his patience being tested to the limit. He pressed the lock button on the key, and the car lights flashed again, confirming his ownership. "She saw me unlock my car, and this is my car," he said, this time louder and clearer so that the neighbors who began to gather around could hear it. However, Linda still refused to stop. "I know people like you," she snarled, her eyes flashing with prejudiced suspicion. "You definitely used some trick to bypass the system. This neighborhood is safe, and we don't tolerate this kind of behavior." Ethan felt a wave of anger roll up in his chest. He wasn't the type of person who was easily provoked, but Linda's obvious irrationality and discrimination made him feel hurt. Looking around, he saw a few people whispering to each other, some looking at him suspiciously, others showing sympathy. He knew that he would not only confront Linda, but also fight to protect his own honor in the eyes of this community. "Okay," Ethan said, his voice decisive. "If you want the police to deal with it, let them come. But I will make sure everything is fully documented, including her baseless accusations." Linda glared at him, but Ethan's assertiveness seemed to make her lose some of her confidence. However, she remained stubborn, constantly pointing at him as if to add weight to her absurd accusations. Ethan silently told him that, no matter how long this incident lasted, he would not let Linda's arrogance and prejudice dominate the story. He is determined to defend the truth to the end, even though he has to face the judgmental gaze of those around him. Police car sirens sounded, breaking the tense atmosphere in the area. Ethan took a deep breath, bracing himself for what was to come. Flashing red and green lights on the patrol car stopped right in front of the gathered crowd. The two policemen walked out, their expressions solemn but calm, trying to control the situation. Linda immediately rushed over, waving her hand dramatically as if she was in a movie. "Officers," she cried, her voice trembling but clear. "This man is trying to steal that car. I witnessed the whole thing. He even threatened me." Ethan stood still, trying to stay calm, but he couldn't deny the feeling of frustration surging in his chest. He took a step forward, raised his hand to signal that he wanted to speak. "Good morning, officers," he said, in a low but firm voice. "I am the legal owner of this car. She is making false accusations and harassing me." The leading policeman raised his hand, signaling the two to remain calm. "Okay, let's take it slowly. We need to see the evidence to clarify everything," he said. His eyes fixed between Ethan and Linda. Without hesitation, Ethan pulled out his car papers, driver's license, and insurance from his jacket pocket and handed them to the policeman. He also pressed the button on the car key, causing the car lights to flash and the doors to unlock perfectly. "This is all the information that proves I own this car," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice unshaken by indignation. The policeman checked the papers carefully. His eyes were stern but not unfair. After collating, he nodded. "Everything is valid," he said, turning to Linda. "Do you have anything to say?" Linda, her face was pale at this time, and she stammered a few words that were not clear. But, he may have faked it. You don't know their tricks." Ethan couldn't believe his ears. He sighed, handing the phone to the second policeman. "I have recorded this whole incident. She not only slandered me, but also called me a thief and used discriminatory language." The policeman looked at the video, and his expression changed from neutral to cold. He turned to Linda, his voice stern. "Madam, this video completely contradicts your testimony. This is an act of slander and disturbing public order." Linda opened her mouth, trying to find an excuse but only received disappointed glances from those around her. "I'm just trying to protect the neighborhood," she shouted, but her voice was much weaker now. Ethan, although relieved that the truth has been clarified, still cannot hide his hurt feelings because of the prejudices he has endured. He looked at Linda, his eyes not containing hatred but determination. "She not only wasted my time, but also the time of people who really needed help from the police. What she did was not only wrong, but also a manifestation of a larger problem." The officer nodded, signaling Linda to leave the scene. "We will take note of this incident and report it fully," he said to Ethan, his eyes respectful. Ethan just nodded, put away his papers, and turned to his car. When he got into the car, the murmur of the crowd was still ringing in, but this time it was not suspicion, but empathy and admiration. He closed the door, took a deep breath, and let the sense of peace gradually return. But in his heart, Ethan knew that this was just a small battle in a bigger battle that he needed to face. Linda returned home in a confused mood, her heart filled with anxiety and shame. The confidence that had always existed on her face was now replaced by a look of fear and anxiety. The critical glances and whispers from neighbors as she left the scene still echoed in her head. The air in the house was frighteningly quiet, as if the space itself was condemning her actions. The next day, Linda receives a phone call from work. The manager's cold voice announced that she had been suspended from work, waiting for the results of the investigation into her behavior in public. Linda was struck by lightning. Her hands trembled when she held the phone. She could not believe that her actions had led to such serious consequences. Not stopping there, social networks also began to buzz about Ethan's video. Critical comments poured in at Linda, calling her a symbol of discrimination and injustice. Articles, pictures, and ridicule appeared everywhere, making Linda afraid to open her phone. Increasingly, the pressure grew, and she realized that her life had changed completely in one morning. Linda's family is also not on the sidelines. Her daughter, after watching the video, texted with frustration and outrage. "Mom not only hurts others but also embarrasses the whole family. I can't believe my mother would behave like that." Those words made Linda feel like she had been stabbed directly in the heart. She was proud of her role as a mother and educator, but now she only sees herself as a failure. Neighbors began to avoid her. The familiar greetings that disappeared every morning, replaced by cold silence. When Linda stepped outside, her eyes searching through the windows and the whispers in the wind made her feel like the whole world was turning its back on her. Gradually, Linda lost the courage to leave the house. She refused the calls, didn't open the door to anyone, and tried to huddle within four walls. But even in isolation, she could not avoid the fact that her actions had irreversible consequences. Linda sat in the living room, her eyes vaguely looking out the window. What she once considered a peaceful life is now gone. The heart is heavy with regret, but at the same time it contains fear of the future. Linda knew that in order to regain some respect, she had to face her mistakes and find a way to make up for what she had lost. But will she have the courage to start over? That question kept repeating itself non-stop during long sleepless nights. When the story of Linda's actions spread on social media, it quickly became a hot topic of discussion. Hundreds of thousands of people watched the video of her confrontation with Ethan, and outrage spread throughout the comments. Linda became a symbol of discrimination and injustice, being labeled Karen, a satirical term for people with similar attitudes. Hashtags such as #JusticeForEthan and #AccountabilityMatters appeared on Twitter and Instagram, attracting the participation of activists, journalists, and celebrities. Some people hold online conversations to discuss racism and prejudice in society, using Linda's actions as a good example. The comments were mostly harshly critical, with many expressing frustration that Linda's actions were not only a personal mistake but also represent a deeper problem in society. Linda, from her isolated home, faces this wave of backlash. Her phone kept ringing with anonymous messages, many of which were filled with insults and threats. The email box was flooded with angry emails from strangers, while neighbors began placing critical notes on her doorstep. Initially, Linda tried to justify her actions on a Facebook post, but the reaction from the online community only made things worse. "This is not a sincere apology," one person commented. "You're just trying to save your reputation." The criticism was so fierce that Linda quickly deleted the article, but the heat of public opinion did not decrease because of that. Several journalists contacted Linda for interviews, but she declined them all. She was terrified that her words might be distorted and exacerbated by the situation. However, what hurts her the most is the disappointment of her own family. Daughter Linda frankly expressed her embarrassment on social media, writing, "I never thought my mother could behave like that. I hope people know that I don't support this action." While Linda faces personal consequences, Ethan becomes a glorified figure. The way he handled the situation calmly and patiently has received admiration from millions of people. Ethan uses the spotlight to foster constructive discussions about racism, and hosts community talks, encouraging people to confront their biases. Linda, pushed into a corner of society, begins to feel the weight of judgment. She realized that her actions were not only a personal mistake, but also a reflection of deep-seated prejudices that she had never acknowledged. Late at night, Linda used to sit by the window, watching the once peaceful street become unfamiliar. Her heart was filled with remorse, but she also couldn't help but fear that forgiveness, from society and herself, might never be attainable. Ethan sat in his home office, the light from the laptop shining on his contemplative face. The video of the encounter with Linda completely changed his life, taking him from a reclusive businessman to the face of a larger struggle. At first, Ethan didn't want this attention. He just wanted to protect his honor and handle the injustice he was subjected to. But when thousands of messages from strangers poured in, expressing support and sharing similar stories, Ethan realized he couldn't stand by. "I can't let this story stop at a mere argument," he told a close friend during a call. It's bigger than me, bigger than Linda. This is an opportunity for change. Ethan begins by participating in community workshops, where he recounts his story calmly but persuasively. He emphasized not only on Linda's wrongdoing, but also on the need to educate and raise awareness of unconscious bias in society. With his firm voice and calm demeanor, Ethan quickly won the trust of those in attendance. He also began partnering with non-profit organizations specializing in equality and social justice. Ethan's talks not only attract locals but also spread nationally. Once, when he was invited to appear on a morning TV show, Ethan shared, "I don't want to be seen as a victim. I want to use this experience to build bridges between communities, so that we can confront and dismantle deep-seated prejudices." The more involved he was in this work, the more Ethan realized his potential to make a difference. He decided to start his own organization called Brighter Horizons, with the goal of providing educational programs on prejudice and communication skills between different community groups. His organization not only focuses on conversations, but also supports people who have been discriminated against, helping them find confidence and opportunities in life. However, this journey is not always smooth. There were nights when Ethan lay awake, wondering if he would be able to shoulder this great responsibility. Criticism from conservatives or negative comments online sometimes makes him feel tired. But every time he sees a change, the eyes of young people who light up when they hear him, or the thank you letters from those who have found hope, Ethan feels empowered. One afternoon, during a large event at a community center, Ethan stood on stage in front of hundreds of people. With a strong and inspiring voice, he ended his speech with words that silenced the audience. "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. And that future must begin with understanding and compassion." Applause echoed throughout the auditorium, and Ethan stood there, feeling once again that he had found his true purpose. Linda sat in the familiar living room, but now everything around her seemed strange. The laptop screen in front of her showed an image of herself, her face pale, her eyes full of fatigue. It was not the confident, authoritative woman Linda had ever known about her. She sighed, her heart was heavy, and then pressed the button to start the live stream. "Hello, I'm Linda Harper," she said, her voice trembling. "I know that many of you have seen the video of me, and I can't justify my actions. I was wrong, and I want to offer my most sincere apologies to Ethan Carter, the community, and anyone who feels hurt by my actions." Linda paused, her hands clutching the chair below to stay calm. "I was behaving with prejudice, unfounded fear, and I realized that it had not only hurt Ethan but also reflected a bigger problem within myself. I am committed to learning and changing, so as not to repeat these mistakes." Although the apology is seen by many as necessary, it does not erase the consequences that Linda faces. In the days that followed, her life continued to sink into coldness and criticism. She was fired from her position at the school library. Her colleagues refused to contact her, and even her once friendly neighbors kept their distance. Linda clearly felt the cost of her actions, not only socially but also mentally. She tried to correct her mistakes. Linda began taking classes on prejudice and social justice, despite the guilt that didn't stop haunting her. She also volunteered at local organizations, hoping to make amends for some of her mistakes. But no matter what she did, Linda knew that it would take a long time to rebuild people's trust. One evening, during a community meeting that Ethan held, Linda quietly walked into the room. Although she knew her presence could be uncomfortable, she felt she needed to face what had happened. When Ethan recognized her, his eyes flashed with surprise but no hatred. After the meeting ended, Linda walked up to Ethan, saying in a low voice, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here. I really hope that I can do something to help." Ethan looked at her, nodding calmly but firmly. "Actions speak louder than words, Linda. I hope you continue to do exactly what you say." Ethan's words left Linda with a feeling of both comfort and responsibility. Her journey to redemption was still long, and she knew that she would never be able to go back to the way she was. But Linda also realized that correcting mistakes and learning was the only way for her to find serenity in the rest of her days. Eventually, as Linda looks back on her journey, she realizes that the event has not only changed Ethan's life, but has also brought her to face herself. And while no one can forget, Linda hopes her actions in the future will prove that people can still change, if they really want to. Ethan stood in front of a crowded auditorium, bright lights shining down to make him stand out. His face was full of determination, but there was a calmness and depth in his eyes. Tonight, you're not just a successful businessman or someone hurt by prejudice. He is a symbol of change, a living testament to turning adversity into an opportunity to build something better. I'm not standing here to tell my story again, Ethan began, his voice strong but full of emotion. It's for us to ponder together. Prejudice is not something we are born with. It is something that is formed by ignorance, fear, and false teachings. But more importantly, prejudice can change. He paused, letting his words seep into each person in the auditorium. Looking around, he saw intently looking eyes, some sympathetic, some reflective, and some with resentment. Change starts with each individual, he continues. Not by blaming or judging, but by dialogue, learning, and understanding. I don't want Linda Harper to be seen as the villain in this story. I want us to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, do we unknowingly carry the same prejudices? And if so, are we willing to change? Ethan took a deep breath, trying to keep his emotions stable as he recalled the stressful moments of that day. Linda was wrong. But she wasn't the only one responsible. This society has created those prejudices, and we all have a role to play in breaking them down. Let's start by listening to each other, getting to know each other, and acting together. After the talk, Ethan walked down the stage to a long round of applause. A group of people came forward to thank him for the inspirational words. But what surprised him the most was Linda, standing quietly at the end of the room. She approached, her eyes filled with repentance. "Thank you," she said, hoarse but sincere. "What you said tonight made me realize that change is not just an action, but a journey." Ethan smiled and nodded. "We're all on that journey, Linda. The important thing is that we are ready to move on." In the months that followed, Ethan's message spread widely, not only within his small community but beyond the city's borders. He has been invited to participate in television programs, write books, and organize seminars on equality and social justice. But for Ethan, success does not lie in titles or glory. "True success," he said in an interview, "is when I see a child grow up in a world where he's not judged by the color of his skin, his background, or anything other than his true worth." Ethan and Linda's story becomes a vivid lesson in hurt, remorse, and most importantly, hope. In all the intricacies of life, they have proven that change is not only possible, but also necessary.